Welcome to this week's Magic Wand Moment. I'm Lindsey Wahlstrom, Chief Mamatologist at Rona's Fun Lab. Today, I'm joined by Mary Jenner, founder and CEO of The Butterfly Pig, an organization that creates interactive, child-friendly medical toys that make healthcare approachable, empowering, and a lot less scary for kids. Mary, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you for having me on here.
Therapeutic play is so important for kids, especially in a hospital setting or who are navigating some type of medical complexity. But for folks who might be a little less familiar with your work, can you just explain more about the organization and what you do?
Yeah. So I'm a nurse turned healthcare innovator, and I started my nursing career in pediatric oncology. And that's where I firsthand saw the need for realistic medical play tools. So a lot of the times we use hospital supplies like an IV and we'll put it in our patient's teddy bear, but we can't leave our patients with a syringe that can connect to their own line. So that's where I saw the initial need for it. And then years later, mid-pandemic on maternity leave, I started dabbling in it and I bought myself a 3D printer, taught myself CAD software, and I started creating the tools. And initially, it was more about representation. So kids with medical needs could see themselves in play. And then it started to grow as our design capabilities increased. And I started working with child life specialists, and we really made it what it is today, where these are educational and interactive medical play tools.
And when you say medical play tools, can you tell us a little bit more about what that means?
Yes, we make items that are realistic mini versions. And so we have even like a license with the Infinity by Moog feeding pump, where we have their exact sticker of what's on their device. So it's a feeding pump. And we make these cute little feeding bags that are filled with like fruit confetti. And so we have that feeding bag and it actually goes into the pump and then it plugs directly into a G tube button or an NG tube toy, things that you can actually sew onto your own stuffed animals. So we have interactive stuff like that, but then we have things as big as a CT scanner, which with a sliding table. And like the newest one was the Berlin Heart, the external ventricular assist device. And that was really fun because I actually spoke to the president of that medical company, and they were really excited and bought some for their own use as well.
That's amazing. It is Child Life Month, and obviously these are types of tools that are helpful for child life teams. Can you talk to me a little bit about what that process is like for you to get involved in a hospital and working with those teams?
Yeah, right now, Child Life, they specialize in medical play and really healing and observing emotional safety and harm in medicine. And they don't need toys. They make stuff. If you ever worked with a child life specialist, they will make stuff from scratch. They're
They
the
will.
most creative people, and it's
Yeah.
absolutely amazing. But that being said, they spend a lot of time on it, and often they will spend a lot of time making like a Berlin heart out of different supplies, and then they give it to that child, then they have to start from scratch for the next person. So it's really time consuming to make all of these tools from scratch. So when we've worked with Child Life and we take requests from them, it's figuring out what are they spending so much time having to make and how can we enhance what they're already doing.
Yeah, it's fantastic. You have some statistics on your website, really impressive stats. So 40% decrease in pediatric anxiety after one interaction with your toys, 112% increase in children's understanding of their diagnosis, 150% increase in patient cooperation, and 65% increase in parental involvement after toy awareness. Whew.
Yeah.
When when you take a moment to think about that level of impact, what rises to the top for you?
You know, it's funny because I this data is actually quite on par with what's out there. And we did these like perception based questionnaires really to just get a feel for like how much of an impact it's having. But it looks very comparable to even the randomized control trials around it and stuff that's already published. So to see that it's happening out there in the world is really exciting. But then so it doesn't feel like it's like some new novel thing because like child life specialists are doing this. But then when I realized that like I think over 25,000 parents have purchased these tools and imagining that they're able to achieve things like this, that is really powerful to take a step back and look at like how we're able to reach the masses with toys like this. I don't think about that enough. Like I'm just, it's hard to like comprehend like that many people.
It is. How many hospitals are you working with at this point in time?
Gosh, now we're probably at over 120 now.
Okay.
Yeah.
A lot of kids, I would imagine,
Yeah.
impacted by that. Um, what is the most popular toy?
That's a great question. We have over, I think, 100 different ones now. So, um, even the most popular one, there's probably like a top five. I would say the IV pole is the most popular because it can be used with our infusion line or like the feeding, enteral feeding line. Um, but then also the butterfly needle is very common because IVs and blood draws are so difficult for kids and quite common that that butterfly needle and even the toy syringe together, that is being used in like a lot of different types of play to help with those procedures.
Yeah, absolutely. I think back to my experience with Rona, my daughter, and she had 126 blood product transfusions in her 9 months of treatment. It's a lot. And I remember vividly how excited everyone was when she went in to get her PICC line. She was actually dancing in the waiting room, which, though it's a procedure and it involves anesthesia and it would involve having essentially like a line in her arm. We were all so excited because we could stop having to place IVs because it is such a process to get an IV on a kid. You mentioned that you were a nurse before in the oncology unit and you were placing IVs on bears and doing things like that. What I really love about your model is that you're adapting the kids' own toys. So you're providing a way for them to use their toys. How did that idea come about?
That was because I I was finding that even when you saw diverse and inclusive dolls out in the world, like Barbie just released that doll with the insulin pump. It's great, but then it is really only representing the person who looks like that, who has that color hair, that color skin. And so mid-pandemic, when this business all started, I actually used to stock diverse dolls on our website as well, where
Okay.
it's all different skin colors. There's dolls with Down syndrome features. And I wanted kids to be able to make whatever doll they thought best represented them or their favorite stuffy, make that into it. Because you do see like the Barbie and some other companies where they have it pre-made, but you know, when a kid has a favorite stuffy, like they want to match their favorite stuffy. So that's why we've made it this way where you don't have to buy a whole new stuffed animal, but you can adapt and customize. So a child with X number of medical devices or conditions can make an exact stuffy that represents them because they can customize it.
Yeah. When you think about now, obviously 125 children's hospitals, this is now your full-time role. What would it have meant to you as a nurse to have had access to these toys?
Oh my gosh, it would have been life changing. I probably would have still been bedside because I feel like I burned out quick because we didn't have tools like this. And when I was able to slow down and take time to like adapt and play and just connect with my patients, it changed everything. So if I had toys bedside where we see that it reduces anxiety and it increases parental involvement, there's just so many different aspects of how care would have been less traumatic for my patients and myself.
Are you able to say more about that?
Yeah, I feel like pediatric care is traumatic for everyone involved. It is traumatic for our kids. It is traumatic for the parents because I've had to hold down both of my daughters, and it is traumatic for the nurses. And if we put more emphasis on preparation and play and looking at healthcare through the lens of a child, there's so much more we can do to prevent medical trauma proactively instead of waiting until it's already there or there's like a diagnosis of anxiety or PTSD. Like there's so much we can do preventative that we are not capitalizing on and incorporating into care nearly as much as we need to.
Absolutely. I was having a conversation with a provider recently, and we were talking about that same thing, that there's trauma involved for every party. And I think until you've been in a hospital, it's really hard to understand the chaos that exists inside of those walls. And not because people aren't doing their job, but people are trying to do so much with such few resources and
Yeah.
often shortages of staffing and time. When I think about being a parent at the bedside, I wish we did have the fortune of having a child life specialist who brought all sorts of toys, and how quickly our toy chest changed, right? We had the feeding tube and the central line, the chemo duct, all of those things, but how critical those were to just give Rona a space to play with it and to process, and the cueing to everyone in her orbit of the things that she was working through on her own time, having the toys and being able to play to show that. Um, do you have a favorite impact story that you've heard from a nurse or a child life team or a family?
I actually, the most recent one that I thought really showed what these toys are capable of. It was a mom who commented or sent a message saying that her son had a really terrible experience at his last echo,
Mm.
and it's the heart ultrasound for listeners, but he had another one coming up and they were already planning to do sedation. She really wanted to avoid that as much as possible, so she found us and she bought the toy echo, and she said that he was able to do the echo procedure without having to get sedation. They were able to prevent that. And I was so excited. I screenshotted that and I posted it on our socials. And multiple people were commenting and sending me messages that they had the exact same experience where they were planning sedation and their kids were able to play with the echo, and it changed everything.
That's amazing. I think that's maybe something people don't understand is that we do sedate kids so often for procedures because they can be scary and traumatic. Phenomenal. That's great. Do you have a toy that's the most meaningful for you to have made?
You know, on I feel like I have two answers here. So I guess you can on the note of the echo, we actually made that because my nephew has HLHS, the hypoplastic left heart syndrome, and his mom, she was actually working part-time for us at the time, and she asked if there was a way we could make an echo. And at the time, we was still earlier on, so this was like the biggest product we were ever going to make. And her story with it, after he had it, he was nervous and withdrawn as other ones. But when he went into his appointment next, he brought it with him and he started teaching the echo tech how to do his own job. So I think that that one is always going to be near and dear to my heart. And then fast forward, when my second daughter was born in 2024, she had severe hypoxia at birth and was in the NICU for hypothermic whole body cooling to protect her brain. So it was kind of a conglomeration of products, but I used one of our doll prototypes to remake what her NICU stay looked like, where I had a little cooling blanket, I had the EEG leads, the CPAP, the central line, and that to me, I remember that I was sitting there holding it and I was like kind of shaking because it was like a year later and I was like, it's weird how like even in toys, like your body can still like remember. So just like
Yeah.
holding that really was powerful for me. And then being able to share that with my 5-year-old too. And like being able to talk about again, like how scary it was when her little sister was in the NICU.
If you could go back or you could talk to your 2020 self, as you're just getting started, what would you want to tell her?
Oof. I, you know, I don't know if I would want to tell her much of anything because I needed everything to happen the way it did. Like I wouldn't want to give her like, this is how you turn this into a mission driven business. Cause at first I would have been like, whoa, nope, I'm a nurse. I am not ready for that. So at the time, being able to think, oh, this is just a side hobby. Like I'm just going to make stuff out of clay. And then like slowly, oh, you know what? I need to get a 3D printer, and it going one step at a time has put me on the growth that I've needed. Like I need to grow personally as I'm like stepping into these different roles and realizing that this is more like of a giant mission that we're leading now.
Um, the name of this series is the Magic Wand Moment, and the reason for that is I am going to hand you an imaginary magic wand right now, and Thank you for taking it. And I'm going to ask you to make a wish. The only rules of the wish has to be for a change in how we deliver pediatric care. And it can benefit patients or caregivers or providers or whomever. What would your wish be and why?
My wish would be that play gets respected and covered by insurance companies. As child life specialists, medical toys, it's all essential to pediatric care. But for some reason, insurance companies aren't reimbursing it, but they will reimburse the after effects of trauma, just not the prevention of it. So I think that would be it.
I love that. That's a fantastic wish. Sometimes we don't think about those system level effects.
Yeah.
That's a
And
great
I
response.
think that if we could wave that wand and make that happen, which I don't think we're too far out from, I think that it will be covered soon. I'm hoping. Then I just think that that would just change the whole healthcare system, because then hospitals would be able to fund more resources into these programs.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you said, it's preventative because as we've discussed at the start of the call, everyone leaves with trauma. Even if you have a good outcome, you will leave with trauma from your care. And so if you can prevent that through whatever means, what a gift. Mary, what comes next for you?
So with this unique position where I have this platform where I'm talking to thousands of families and clinicians and hospitals all the time, we have really identified that there is so much more we can do to prevent trauma in care. And there's hospitals doing wonderful things, but there's not really a place for us all to learn together and share about those successes. So we are creating a Thrive network through the Innovative Care Institute, where it will be hospitals coming together to share the QI projects they're working on. We'll build QI projects together, whether it is testing medical toys at the bedside or other parts of care like vaccine techniques and methods, like different things that we know that there are certain best ways to do things to reduce trauma, but we don't yet have a network where we can all share and learn together. So at the March 30th, we will have a podcast series coming out called Care Rewritten, where we'll talk about that and how we're going to start banding together to really rewrite care so it's less traumatic for everyone involved.
I love that. I can't wait to listen to that. Where will we be able to access the podcast?
On anywhere that you should be able to get podcasts.
Okay, fantastic. So we'll look out for the podcast on the and your chosen podcast network, and then we'll send everyone to thebutterflypeg.com to learn more about your work. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's really been a pleasure to learn more about you and your work, and thank you so much for all that you're doing to prevent trauma for children and to help make care just a little bit more easy and accessible.
Thank you.